Ryon with the MBA MW. I'm joined here by the legend, Lenny Gordon with Truist. Some call the Michael Jordan of mortgages. Lenny is gracious enough with his time to spend with us today, where this is the first of our hopefully many podcast series. We couldn't think of someone better to launch the series with. So I wanted to, bring Lenny on, have him share his wisdom. I met with Lenny a couple times over the last couple of years. He's taught me a lot about the business. If you live in DC and Montgomery County, you've definitely heard his name. You've probably lost many deals to him over the years. I know I speak for everyone. I'm looking to celebrate Lenny's retirement party whenever he's ready. I'll host, I'll cook, whatever you need, Lenny. But thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. So if you want to do a little brief introduction or anything you want to say, fire away.
No, just thank you for having me. Appreciate it. Been doing this a long time. Figured you might want somebody that was like a little younger, a little more hip, but I'm old school and just happy to be here. So I'll answer whatever I can.
Thank you, Lenny. And look, old school works. It's old school and it's classic for a reason. It never changes. So Lenny, tell us a little bit about how you got in the mortgage business. How'd you get here?
So when I was at University of Maryland, I was getting ready to graduate, and this was a long time ago, almost about 38 years ago. And a family friend was in the mortgage business in Baltimore. So my dad said, why don't you go talk to our friend? And, interest rates had just gotten down to like 11%, 10.5%. The industry was booming. People were lining up at the door to refinance. So I went to see my family friend, and I walked in and it was complete chaos. Phones were ringing off the hook. My friend was on two lines, seeing a movie, and I didn't really understand what was going on. I'd never taken out a mortgage. I didn't even really understand the whole process. But one thing led to another. He introduced me to a company that was in Montgomery County where I was living after college. And literally about, 30 days after I graduated, I went to work, and, here we are, a long time later. I'm still
rock and rolling.
Yeah.
All right. So went to a family friend, similar background to me. That's exactly how I started 12 or 13 years ago. Didn't know anything about the industry. I couldn't even spell mortgage. Didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But somehow you've managed to do it, right? You're number one year in, year out. Who did you look up to when you first started, or who do you look up to now? Like, who were these inspirations for you?
So I think when I like think about who shaped my career, like who helped me, it was definitely my dad. At an early age, I got to witness a work ethic that was I didn't know any different. He got up every day, he worked hard, he was honest, he did business with a handshake. If he screwed up, he still lived up to whatever he had promised. And so I feel fortunate. I was really lucky to have a role model, somebody that, basically every day of my life I got to interact with and watch. And so, I lost my dad a couple of years ago, but I still think about, all the great examples that he showed me and that I still, use today. And then the second person, I've only worked for really two companies. The first company I worked for, I was there 20 years, and I really would have never left, but the financial crisis came and the bank that I worked for was acquired by another bank. But the company was family to me. And there was a gentleman there who was in charge of production for the East Coast, and he was based in Northern Virginia. And he literally became family to me. And he made it a point every 2-3 weeks to cross the bridge and come into Maryland, into Rockville, where I was. And we would have lunch, and we talked about everything other than business. And, family, sports, just, where he had dinner last night, his dog, and I learned from him really what kindness was, what commitment was, how to treat people, and it makes you loyal. Like you want to work for somebody like that. You never want to leave a company when you have an individual that takes. I mean, look, you live around here. It could take 2 hours to get from Tyson's Corner to
Sure.
Rockville, depending on traffic. And he made it a point, literally every 3 weeks for 20 years, to make that trip.
Wow.
And it was never about, we didn't sit down and talk about loans or production or a business plan, or it was just, hey, I'm checking in on you. And I always will be grateful. And I learned so much about um, what it means to treat your employees with such respect and to be there for them. And that lesson has never left me. And he was such a great example. And you want to produce for people like that, right? Like,
Sure.
it's 5 o'clock. Maybe you've done one loan for the day. You want to maybe get one more,
Yeah.
uh, because you want to make that person proud. So I would say those are the probably two people that have shaped me the most.
And who is that individual? Is it National City you're at?
Yeah, it was National City, and his name was Ben Ormond.
Okay. Very nice. And what did your dad do for a living?
My dad was in sales. He
Sure.
was in sales, and he was a lawyer by trade, but he didn't really practice law. But you know, he he was uh, he was a relationship guy. And when he told somebody he would do something, even if he couldn't, he figured out a way to get it done. So I observed a lot, which I feel very fortunate about, watching him when I was young.
That's awesome. That's really great. And having these role models, they always help, right? They give us this path of what we can do. It makes it easy. Instead of feeling like we have to reinvent the wheel, we can just take from those around us. And I'm glad to hear you had some great ones along the way. When you started out your career, like everyone else, you're waiting to grow, you're waiting to blow up. Did you get any like early breaks early on? Anything that really changed the trajectory of your career?
So a couple things. When I started, I'm in Montgomery County,
Hmm.
starting to be a loan officer, and I knew nobody. I was from Baltimore. I had no family, no friends. I had nothing, no relationships. And I was competing against people who grew up here. Their mom was a real estate agent, their dad was a builder, their aunt was a financial planner. I literally knew nobody. And I was terrible. I did not do a mortgage for 2 years, maybe two and a
Wow.
half years. But back then, Jake, you could go to real estate offices, and that's where all the agents were. Nobody worked out
Sure.
of their house. You had to go into the office to log into the MLS. So I would go in with a stack of rate sheets, and most of the agents would just crumble them up and throw them away. But they were respectful. They waited till I left. But I would spend 2, 3 hours at a Long and Foster, then I would go to a different place, and that was my day. And nobody really wanted to talk about mortgages with me at these places because they could tell I was new and I didn't know what I was talking about. And, I had never done a mortgage, but they were
Sure.
nice to me. And we talked about, I don't even know what we talked about, but it wasn't mortgage stuff. So I was ready to get out of the business. I was 2 years in, and I was like, I'm failing at this, and it's not going well. Um, there's got to be something better I can do. And just when I was ready to give up, a real estate agent, and I'll never forget it, she said, I need to talk to you. She said, I got a great deal for you. It's a $60,000 mortgage, and I want you to call these people immediately. So I call, and the clients were like, "Oh my God, you're the sixth loan officer that's called us. The other five told us they couldn't do the deal, and I don't know why you think you can, but we'll give it a shot." Well, I literally had nothing else to do, and somehow we got that little $60,000 loan to the finish line. I showed up at the closing, and the rest was history. The real estate agent was very grateful. She put me on her. I was like her go-to now. And back then, you could go to the Tuesday meetings at the real estate office. So she
Sure.
invited me to her meeting, and she told everybody about what had happened. And little by little, I started to break in a little, and one deal led to two, and two led to four, and then the next thing here we are today.
Start snowballing.
Yeah,
Um, it's so funny. You mentioned it took you like 2 years to do your first loan. I look at all these top producers, right? There's Scott Story in my office. Scott didn't do a loan his first year. He's done close to 200 million in a year. He's always killing it. And he was talked out of quitting so many times, going into Tim Witter's office, tears and saying, I can't do it. I can't do it. And look at him now, right? So for all those young, LOs out there that are like, I don't know if I can break through, it really is perseverance, right? It's just
yeah.
even the greatest. It's not an instant success. This business is not instant gratification.
Now you really gotta. I mean, you got to be patient, and you got to be. You got to make a commitment. And look, I knew, um, all my friends were starting to make money. They had real jobs. They were doing well, and here I am. Literally, I haven't done one thing, and it's 2 years into this. So, um, my confidence wasn't really that great,
Sure.
and and then this thing happens, and that $60,000 loan. I mean, that could have been a $10 million loan. And,
Sure.
it was just I gave it everything I got, and look, we just bring the loans in. You got to have support, and I was really
Sure.
lucky to have a great support system that helped me get that loan through. Everybody from my assistant to, well, I didn't have an assistant back then, but my processor, closer, underwriter. So it was a good story. But probably, who knows, if I didn't do that deal, I probably would have gotten out of the business soon thereafter.
Wow. It's like a sliding doors moment right there.
Yeah.
It's funny. So you started telling the stories of, back in the 80s of, just getting that one opportunity, going to the offices. And I hear a lot of similarities, right? To what I went through and what I know a lot of people are going through now. How do you look at the business today versus when you started? What do you see as the same? What do you see as different?
Not that much has changed as far as how you get the business.
Sure.
You gotta be available. This is not a Monday through Friday 9 to 5 job. I remember, a long, long time ago, I'm sitting in a movie theater. It's a Saturday night. It's the one night that my wife and I were going out, and we didn't have cell phone. This is probably before your time, but we had beepers back then.
Sure.
Pagers, and this is like 1991 or something. And my pager keeps going off in the movie theater, and I look at my wife. I said, I'll return the call. I'll get to a payphone and return the call when the movie's over. She's like, no, get out there now and call that person back immediately. So, you know, there's still the same sense of urgency. People want to get answers. The business of, developing relationships and being there, none of that has changed. Borrowers still have to be credit worthy. All the boxes
Sure.
have to be checked. You can't just have good credit but not income. Everything's got to line up. So I feel like, for me, not much has changed. Obviously, since the financial crisis, there's a much deeper dive into looking into borrowers and their income and their
Sure.
sources of monies and deposits, and loan conditions have increased because of the due diligence that credit places on us. But I don't try to get too bogged down in all that. I feel like I have some structure and I stick to my plan, and it seems to work for me.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, I've always heard the business explained as it's not complicated, but it's not easy, right?
Yeah,
So it's not like we're doing rocket science. It's really just, can you return phone calls and emails? Are you reliable? Do you say what you're going to do? And most importantly, do you do it? It doesn't do a lot of good to just promise you're going to do something. It's the follow through where all the money's in, right? I
Yeah,
have these conversations with our rookies in our office all the time. It's like, that's great that you have this 10-page business plan. That's wonderful. But are you actually doing what's on your business plan, right? You don't get paid for a business plan. You get paid for execution.
I agree 100%.
So, look, you've been doing this a long time. You've performed at a high level year in, year out. How do you keep that drive? How do you keep that fire when someone could say, I'm going to go down to Boca, I'm going to go, kick off for a couple of weeks? What keeps this fire going?
Um, I'm not sure, but I really don't know. But I like what I do, and I think I look at myself more as an educator, like an advisor. Um, I probably give out more advice and get like no deals out of that conversation than anybody that I know. But I feel like if people want to reach out to me, and I have kids that are in their 30s, so a lot of their friends are buying houses.
Sure.
And that generation, a lot of those people, they just go online and just try to find the absolute best rate possible. And they call me and they're like, Lenny, I found a great rate, and I'm buying a house in DC, and there's this credit union in Nebraska, and they got this rate that I don't think anybody can beat. Would you mind looking it over? Of course, I look it over. I said, it looks great. I don't see anything wrong. There's no crazy fees. They're not charging you anything they shouldn't. If if the you know if the rate is what matters to you, and that's what's most important, I think it's a great deal for you. And I, you know, and I end the conversation with, if you need me, I'm always here for you. If you want to run anything by me. And um, of course, what happens next. It's a week before closing, and they call me and they say, um, that credit union, well, they used an appraiser from like, Florida, and the property's in DC, and that didn't go well.
Sure.
And they didn't really get the closing costs right because they didn't understand the transfer tax. And we're
Every
like
time.
first, yeah. So, obviously the next loan or the next opportunity, it doesn't even matter what my rate is. That person's calling me. They've had a bad experience. So I think, I'm just my low pressure, being a good listener, just my quiet sort of confidence that I have in what I do, um, my integrity, my just things like that drive me. And I like helping people. And what an honor, how grateful are we that somebody says, hey, Jake, or hey, Lenny, we're making the biggest purchase of our lives, and we are entrusting you to help us get to the finish line.
Yeah.
Like, I never lose track of that. Like, that is to me so important. Like, I feel so honored that somebody would say, we're going to spend all this money and so much can go wrong. Like, the
Sure.
stories. I
Oh yeah.
mean, all it takes is one little thing to go wrong. And yet, through word of mouth, referral, through whatever it might be, somebody's calling me. So I never lose track of that. And that drives me to want to help people. Um, and the appreciation I have for the trust that's put in me is just something that I don't know where that, it's just something that I've always had. I feel very grateful that I can help on the journey of these people, when they buy a house.
That's awesome. Right. And I love that you talk about this gratitude there. And, so many times I talk to people and they're like trying to convince someone to do something else, right? About no matter what the situation is, they somehow are the best, right? But I love the idea of just honest advice, right? Their strengths, their weaknesses. If this one number is all you're concerned with, great, go for it. I'm here if you need me, right? There's not a
Yeah.
big pressure sell on any of that. It's the confidence.
Look, there's always a loan the next day. I'm always
Yeah.
going to get a phone call the next day. So I don't, like, letting things go is a big deal for me at this point in my life. Like, you know, we like to all do as much business as we can.
Sure.
Sometimes it just doesn't line up. But I always feel good when I end the call that I've educated and I've
Yeah.
advised the best I can. And if somebody wants to go another way, I wish them the best. And, um, if that all happens on a Monday, I know Tuesday there's going to be another opportunity. So I don't really get too pushy and, you know, my strengths are different than other people, the service level and just the things that we do. So I think, that keeps me going. That's what really
Sure.
keeps me going.
I love that. All right. So you mentioned, I think, your family and your kids. You have 3 kids, is that right?
Yeah, 2 boys and a daughter.
Okay. And did you ever advise them or did they ever consider getting in the mortgage business?
Um, Not really. No.
Okay.
We talked about it. Obviously, they knew what I did. They see what I was doing. They saw my commitment. You know, um, planes are getting ready to take off. I'm on the
Sure.
phone. I'm middle of vacation. I got to go take a phone call. But I think, both my boys, they're very successful in what they do. Um, we talked about it, but I don't think there was ever really a strong feeling about getting in the mortgage business for whatever reason.
Sure.
And I didn't encourage it. It would have been great if they wanted to do it. I would have been there for them, but they sort of took their own paths.
Yeah. I like that. Um, for those that are getting in the business today, the rookies, those considering it, what advice would you give them?
It's not an easy business. You got to be patient. Um, you got to be committed to being in it for the long run. Um, it doesn't come easy, and you really, really need to get to know. Um, if you get the opportunity to do a loan,
Sure.
um, you really need to get to know that client. I mean, I take every loan myself. I look at that as an opportunity to develop a relationship, and I don't pass that on to anybody else. That's my responsibility, and that's my time to understand who I'm getting involved with. And I think for new people in the business, you just need to get out there. You need to hit the streets. You need to talk to people that can direct business to you. You
Hmm.
need to align yourself maybe with a company that has all the things that you're looking for, and not every company does, but
Sure.
that's part of the challenge. But it can be a great business. But I'm a perfect example of not having any like zero relationships, basically building the business on my own. It took a long time. And I just think if it's something you're committed to, um, and you're okay with the fact that it may take a few years, um, that it can be a great business for you and you're helping people achieve, the financial, the American dream, and I just think that you got to really understand that it takes a lot of patience and a lot of time to crack it.
Sure.
So, uh, and we have a lot of competition. So, you're not getting into an industry where, um, it's a limited playing field. Uh, there's a million people doing what we do.
Yeah. So I love that you mentioned that it's not a quick hit, right? There's so many people. We tell them best case scenario, it's probably gonna take you 3 years to start really producing here. It's such a buildup, and I think those that come in this mindset of, I'm different, I can make the phone ring right away. It's like this job will humble you pretty quickly. You got to take the long term mindset.
I agree, 100%. I mean, you know, um, like I said, I have two, my boys are in their 30s, and when a lot of their friends were getting ready to graduate, they talked about getting in the mortgage business. And the interest rate environment at that time was really low, and everybody was getting in the business. And, you know, a lot of these people took my advice and they went and they interviewed and they talked, but they ultimately decided for whatever reason not to get in the business. And the few that did, it took a good 5, 6 years, and some of them still haven't figured it out.
Sure.
So it's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I believe it. Um, what would you say? You've been in the industry a very long time, right? What would you say the challenges our industry faces today? Is there any concerns of automation, AI? What do you think of all this?
So I remember like 20 some years ago, everybody said, Lenny, you got to go find something else to do. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are going to originate loans, and the loan officers are going to be squeezed out. And then, you know, some companies that are not in business anymore, you know, you got to worry about them because, they're taking over all the business. And then, more recently, I don't know how you're going to survive. You got all these online companies that, are taking away market share,
Sure.
um, automation, AI. Look, I personally don't worry about that stuff. The level of service that I think we provide to people is way different than you can find with some of these automated types of things that are coming along, things that people are talking about. So I I've heard every story. Yes, there will be some new automation and AI and things like that, and there will be a piece of the business that maybe you lose to that. But for the population that I work with, where service and just how we do things, um, I think there will always be a market for that.
Sure.
So I'm not that concerned about where we are, where we're going with technology and automation and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I love that answer. And I always think of like just use like shopping as an example, right? You could get a t-shirt from Walmart, Amazon, you could get it from Nordstrom's, you could get it from Gucci. There's not just one t-shirt, right? And there's different levels of service, texture, all of these things. It's no different in our industry and any other industry. So this idea of the client is always focused solely on one number and one aspect, I would say that's not right, right? There's a lot of things that are important as part of the transaction.
Look, I mean, you get what you pay for. I mean, the
Hmm.
bottom line is some people are of the mindset that, you know, they want to do things a certain way, and, service level doesn't matter. And, you know, that's fine. There's room for those people. And then there's other people that, want things done a different way. So I think there's room for everybody. It just depends on how you do your business
Sure.
and, as a client or as a borrower, what's important to you. Um, I I've heard every in my, you know, career, I've heard every possible scenario where the loan officer was going to be squeezed out and there
Sure.
wasn't going to be a need. And here we are, almost 40 years later, and there's still a million of us running around, successful, plenty of business. So I don't lose a lot of sleep over that stuff.
Good. I like that.
Yeah.
What advice would you give yourself when you started out? If you could go back in time and talk to, original Lenny who just started out, didn't know anyone, what would you tell him?
So, you know, we all want to do as much business as we can. And, back in the day, literally every loan opportunity that came across my desk, I would try to do. And I think it's okay. And I've learned this, in the last, whatever, 20 years, it's okay to say no. It's okay to turn away a loan because it just doesn't fit in your company's guidelines, or
Sure.
something doesn't seem right. Something seems out of place. You never want to get into a position where you're compromising your character or your integrity. So I've learned that in a nice, graceful way, I say no a lot. Like, I'm sorry, Jake. I just don't think our company's guidelines align with what you're trying to do. We I don't want to waste anybody's time. So
Sure.
I think when I look back when I was, starting out, like everybody else, you wanted to do every loan you could. You
Of
wanted
course.
to try to do every loan that came across your desk. And I think the lesson that I've learned is there'll be plenty of good loans to do. There's
Mhm.
no reason to bring in a loan that is just not going to make it to the finish line or doesn't fit your company's guidelines. And it, to spend the amount of time and energy on a deal that probably isn't going to be able to get through, um, I think that's just bad energy. And for me, it was hard to let go of that. But I've learned that saying no sometimes is the right answer.
I like that, right? We all want to get paid. We all want to do the loans. We all want to be the hero, but sometimes it's a losing proposition. They're trying to make 1 + 1 3. It just isn't going to work, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So sometimes getting out early, just say, hey, look, sorry, I think this person may be a better fit. This company, this outlet, trying to be gracious, give good advice, but just honest advice is really the key there.
Yeah, 100%.
So again, I keep going back to this. I've been doing this a very long time, high level. How do you stay so top of mind with your clients and referral partners?
So, you know, when when like I said earlier, when we do a loan for somebody, we're so appreciative, or like I feel so grateful, and I feel like it's my duty to stay in touch with somebody if I feel like there's something they need to know. If they have an
Mhm.
adjustable rate and it's going to be changing in the next couple of years, um, I track it. I try to stay in touch with people through emails,
Sure.
marketing campaigns. Um, you know, we the amount of calls that I get, and I love getting them all. Like, don't call customer service, call me.
Mm.
Lenny, why did my payment go up? What happened? Did my taxes change? Lenny, I'm changing insurance companies. So I encourage every loan that like we do, I encourage people to understand this is a long-term relationship. This is not
Sure.
transactional. This is not a 30-day relationship.
Mm.
And I think people really like take that to heart.
Sure.
They call me, I call them. So, I mean, look, I have thousands of previous clients in my database. It's not easy to stay in touch with everybody,
Sure.
and you can't do that. But through um, emails and marketing and just personal, like picking up the phone and calling somebody on some type of anniversary or some event. um, I feel like I do. That's really important to me because that's the biggest driver of my business
Sure.
is the referrals from my previous customers. So staying in touch is something we try to do. It
Hmm. Of
doesn't always work,
course.
but you do the best you can, and you try to really leverage those clients and those relationships because it leads to a lot of good stuff usually.
I really like something you said there about you wanting them to call you every time with a problem, an issue, an escrow question, all that. So many times I know loan officers like, oh God, just call servicing, or oh God, just deal with this at the county directly. These issues are opportunities. They're opportunities to re-engage your
Yep.
clients, to show them you care, right? To show you that you are there to provide great service. So if you look at it as an opportunity rather than a problem, it's going to reward you and it's going to make you a better loan officer and a better referral partner.
Look, anytime you can talk to somebody on the phone that you've helped in the past
Mhm.
and you can rekindle that relationship, if
Oh
it's
yeah.
been um, usually something good can come out of that. And that's how I look at that. And, you know, look, we're all busy and maybe your focus is on dealing with new customers,
Sure.
but my focus has always been never to lose track of the old customers because that's a really important segment of my business plan. It's, staying in touch with those people um, is a huge, huge referral source for me. So I never lose track of that.
I would agree. It's big part of my business plan. I think most successful loan officers really appreciate and value their past clients, right? These are people that have trusted you, they've worked with you, they sing your praises. So it's certainly some large portion of our business we should be focusing on. So a couple themes that I really picked out of our conversation today. One was gratitude, right? I really got this sense of you really appreciate the trust from your referral partners and past clients to refer you. You really crave and appreciate that opportunity to help someone, make a difference in their life, create this home that they're going to be a part of for many, many years to come. And I really got this positive glass half full view of the world, right? The business, you're dealing with clients and, agents, all this. So those are some things that I just, felt in this conversation. I really appreciate that.
No, I mean, I'm glad you felt that way. I mean, it's, to me, I just try to stay grounded. We start over every day, whatever happened yesterday, whatever success you might have had. I erase it from the memory bank. It's like we start over, and we're all in this sort of the same, it's the same process. We might have a great day, a great week, a great month, celebrate it a little, do what you got to do. But, we go back and start over every day. And that excites me. I like the opportunities that, the new opportunities that come.
Sure.
Like I said earlier, what an honor it is. Somebody's buying their first house or their second home, or they've saved up enough money to, move up to a bigger house. Their family's expanded, and they come to you to help you, to ask for your help. I mean, that's, to me, that's the best part of this business, is to be able to see that dream come through. And like I said earlier, it's an honor that they select you,
sure,
to help with that journey. It's just really, to me, I never, ever lose track of that.
I love it. Well, Lenny, this was great. I really, really appreciate your time. I know our members are going to be very appreciative to hear these wise words. Any parting wisdom or things you want to share on the way out?
No, I mean, look, I'm not, this is, we're just doing mortgages. We're not,
Sure.
In the emergency room here doing critical care.
Right.
And I don't have all the answers. There's so many great loan officers that we have in the area. And a lot of people do a great job. I just feel, I do my small part, and happy that I've been able to give some wisdom to people. And yeah, I think if it can be a great business, if you stick with it and you're patient and you understand there's some up and downs that you're going to experience.
Sure.
But this is all I've ever done. I don't know how to do anything else. So for me, it's worked out okay. And I look forward to, hopefully helping some more people down the road with mortgages.
Awesome. Well, Lenny, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake. Take care.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye.